What up, Winbush here. And today we're going to mix it up and do it a little bit different. I know everybody's used to me doing tutorials, but I'm really excited about this project. I actually got to meet this fellow last year during the design and animation tour. Let me introduce my new friend or BFF, Haz.
Hey, dude. Glad to be here. I'm glad we finally found the time to make this happen. So I'm super stoked being here, dude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, on my other channel that I have, I actually did a review of Moontopia, the UEFN game
Yes.
that you released last year. I haven't kept up with that channel too much. It was like a side project thing, but happy to introduce you to the audience on my main channel here and just give everybody a glimpse of what you've been doing because, we've been speaking for the past couple of years. I know you've been working in video games and virtual production and even coming out with your own feature film, which we're going to touch upon here in a little bit. But you've done a lot of stuff in the industry here, which I'm really excited to talk about. So first off, I want to tell everybody about Moontopia because that's something available that everybody can go out and play inside of Fortnite right now. Like, did you want to just give like a quick elevator pitch of what Moontopia is for the audience out there?
100%. I mean, thanks for featuring it on your channel, dude. I really appreciate it. Montopia was actually an animated film, which we were gonna make all in Unreal Engine 5, but the process to make a television show, especially animation, is a lot of work. You need a showrunner, you need a network attached to it in terms of like a distributor, and it was just a lot of work. So we kind of paused it. And then when UEFN came out, I was like, oh my God, we need to make something UEFN. So we took all of the assets we had built in Unreal Engine 5 for the Moontopia teaser trailer and migrated that into UEFN. And then from there, we started to make a gaming experience. And essentially, the UEFN game reflects the pitch of the movie, which is basically it's like the tension of gravity meets the horror of A Quiet Place set on the moon. That was essentially the logline pitch, and we kind of just paid homage to that and stuck that in UEFN. It was a very experimental project. We learned a lot making that game. We were like, I think we were one of the first to dive into UEFN at the time when it first came out. So it was incredibly buggy, as we all know, but we were very fortunate to be able to work closely with the Epic team. In terms of them kind of giving us guidance and stuff like that. And it's still very experimental. The fact that you only have 400 megabytes to play with, considering, we're doing console games which have way more memories to play with, texture sizes and so on. So, but at the same time, dude, it was like, and I'm sure you'll appreciate that because I see the arcade cabinet in the back there, but like, it
Absolutely.
was like making a retro game. We only have a fixed finite amount of video memory to play with. In the case of Fortnite or UEFN, you have 400 meg for everything: audio, devices, the verse code, all the assets, everything has to fit in 400 meg, which kind of makes sense, right? Because of the Fortnite ecosystem, you want everyone to be on the same like latency, right? So if someone has like an 80 gig game, it's not going to be fair on the server. So we had to readjust our mindset to make that work. But because of my background being in video games back in 97, 98, like PlayStation 1 days, it kind of went back to those days, and I was like, I remember the days I have like 64 by 64 textures and tiled them. Whereas the younger members of the team were like, dude, 400 meg, my Photoshop files are bigger than that. So, so yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely a learning curve. But yeah, you can go out and play it. You know what? We're treating Moontopia not like a one-off thing. It's more of like, I don't want to use the word live service games because it's not, but the mentality is that we constantly keep updating it. Every time UEFN's updated with new features, we will constantly update it. So it does have a slight live service thing. The only thing is it's free to play.
Yeah, which I mean, Mootopia was a big influence on what I've been currently working on because I have my game with Method Man that I'm hopefully going to be releasing here soon. I actually had the Mootopia poster inside of the bus stop there, just paying homage to one of the people that actually influenced me to jump into UEFN because I saw it. But once you actually see somebody that dive in and actually create something within there, then it lets people know that like, hey, this is something that I can actually do and be successful at because like when Metopia came out, I seen it everywhere. Like Epic was showcasing it. I saw it all over YouTube, LinkedIn, of course. Like it was all over the place. So it's really cool to see how you took something that you had on a shelf because it was a feature film that you were no longer working on. You're like, I have these assets already here, so why not make a game out of it? Which is really cool because it's like you have something already there and you reformatted it into something else, which I forget what the term was for it when
Transmedia.
transmedia. There we go.
Transmedia.
Is that your phrase? Because I never heard anybody use it.
No, I wish, dude. I wish I coined that phrase, but no, it's an actual term they use. In fact, transmedia has been going around for a very long time, but it's not. It wasn't really used in the context of the way we're using it. Transmedia back in the day, like if you look at Harry Potter, right? It's a transmedia project because you have the books, then you have the movies, then you have the video games, then you have the comic books, you have the merchandise. So that's usually what transmedia usually meant. But today, we take transmedia in a different way. Today, transmedia is like you build something once and you repurpose that several times into different what you call verticals, right? So whether it's a comic book, whether it's a UEFN game, whether it's a console game, whether it's an animated series, whether it's whatever we want it to do. Even the posters that we created in Moontopia was actually done in UEFN. Was done, and we just export out some frames, high res frames, and then just put some titles on. That's it. So it's an exciting time, dude, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that will transition into the next thing because, we're stick on Moontopia just for a couple more minutes here, but I know you have some exciting news. I know you said it's not a live service game, but you are expanding on the franchise, right? Which you just received something really big that's going to help you push it to that next level that it needs to go to.
100%. This is exclusive for the Winbush channel, dude. This is
That's how we
exclusive,
do
but
it.
that's how we do it. A few weeks ago, we were very, 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 very fortunate to receive a mega grant from Epic. Now, we all know Epic mega grants are getting more like gold dust, right? It's very, very
Yeah.
hard to get through to them. And we got one because of, the reaction we got on Moontopia, but also, I had developed an entire universe for Moontopia, like, creating, offshoot games, different types of games, and even having an element of STEM as well for science, technology, education, which I'm a nerd. I love space, and I felt like Fortnite could be a really good way to kind of educate people about the moon and about our planet and so on, but gamify it as well. So I submitted this thing kind of like last year, September. Didn't think I'll get in, especially, with all the restructuring that was happening. I just thought, oh, this would never happen. And a few weeks ago, we got a grant to expand it, and we're so excited. I'm going to be speaking at the Unreal Fest in Prague, and I'm going to be showing very early material for that. But yeah, you heard it first, man. We're expanding Moontopia. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, that's major. So since you did put this announcement out, your inbox is gonna get crushed with everybody asking about the mega grant. So in like a one liner, is there any like pointers you could give to anybody about why you think you got the mega grant? Because I got it a lot when I received my mega grant a couple years ago. Everybody was asking, how did you do it? How did you do it? And everybody has a different approach to it, right? Like I know
Yeah.
Epic Games, they want to see how you're going to use the mega grant to fulfill your project. And I always tell people, don't come in with an idea, like have your idea already ready to showcase. So have a prototype or at least something to show that you've already started the process. Because if you're coming in at zero, it's kind of like, why would I fund your project when you haven't even put any effort into your own project?
110%, dude. That's exactly what it is. Even like the first mega grant we got for the movie that we're going to talk about, like even that we had to do a proof of concept prototype. And you're exactly right. Why would anyone invest in a project if you don't have anything to show in the first place, right? I think for us, we got the mega grant for the expansion of Utopia because it's all about timing. It's really all about timing. There is no magic formula on how to get a mega grant. And to be honest with you, they change the committee every few months and different people assess mega grants. I mean, it's a fact. So just because the way I got the mega grant doesn't mean if you do the same thing that I did, you're going to get it. So the tip I would say is look at what is trending on Epic, right? So when I got my first mega grant for Max Beyond, which was called Rift, couple of years ago, it was for virtual production. It was for making real-time animated features. So back then, 2 years ago, that was the buzz, that was the rage. Epic wanted to support more of those projects. So of course, I got a mega grant. If I try to apply for a mega grant today to make a full animated short film, say in Unreal Engine 5 using metahumans, I most likely won't get it because it's already saturated. It's a done thing. It isn't. We're not figuring things out. Everyone can do it now. So with Fortnite, we know very clearly, after seeing Tim Sweeney announce that they are focusing mainly on Fortnite, and UEFN plays a big part in that, especially Verse and so on. Then of course it makes sense. If someone comes up and says, "Hey, I have a project that's going to push UEFN and help develop it further, expand an already existing Fortnite IP that's already got traction and press, then of course it's a no-brainer they're going to support it, right? Or at least think about supporting it. So that's one big tip I would say, to look at what is trending, what makes sense. Put your headspace into what Epic would want to look for. And that's really hard because you don't really know, but you kind of have to look at what they're talking about. They're not talking about virtual production a lot anymore. They're talking about Fortnite, Lego, UEFN, all of that. So that makes more sense. Who knows? Like maybe in a year's time, like if I try to apply for another mega grant, I won't get it because by then it's saturated. So I would say look at that. The other thing also, you've got to remember, not that I'm speaking for Epic or anything, but they are not, from what I understand, they are not financing projects. So what I mean from that is, you have this amazing film. They're not going to say, okay, well, finance the film. They'll finance the processes. So in our case, from X Beyond or Rift, as it was called before, we were doing cel-shaded kind of tools which didn't exist. We're doing a lot of stuff that didn't exist in 426. So of course they wanted to support that, help us, and they gave a mega grant. With Fortnite, with UEFN, we're doing things where we're doing like buggy racing mixed with educational elements. We're taking the Moontopia level and really turn it upside down, literally, to create new types of gameplay in Zero G. But essentially, we're developing tools using Verse because we're doing things that we're not using the vanilla version of UEFN because everyone can do that. So what I said in my pitch, I'm not going to revealing too much of what the project is, but like I was saying this, these are the things that don't exist in UEFN. And these are the things that we want to do in UEFN in order to expand Moontopia. And this is why we need a mega grant to help make that. So to them, it's like, well, since they're going to be doing stuff that doesn't come out, that isn't coming out from the vanilla UEFN, it's stuff that they're developing and willing to share to the community, by the way, which is a big thing. Share your results to the community. Then, of course. So that's tip 2. Tip 3 is have a social media platform. Have a lot of coverage. You don't need to have 1 million views, but show that you are constantly sharing behind the scenes. You are constantly sharing. I mean, you do this so well, Jonathan. Like, the fact that I learned Unreal watching your videos, by the way, just an FYI. So thanks to you. But because we're putting stuff out. So for Moontopia, we did a lot of behind the scenes. We actually went up and shot like an EPK style, interview stuff to really show that we were serious about this being a commercial part of our business and my career, essentially. So they see that, and that all helps as well.
Yeah, if anybody hasn't seen your behind the scenes stuff, I would say definitely watch it. As somebody that's worked on like DVDs and Blu-rays in the past and worked on behind the scenes stuff, I'm like, that's the type of stuff that I miss. Like, you don't see that type of coverage anymore, like the talking head footage with the key art behind you. Like, it was very professionally made. So it was actually a throwback to how stuff used to be, which I wish that stuff would come back more because, I mean, a lot of times, like Lord of the Rings was a big one for me. Like, the movie was good, but the behind the scenes was way better than the movie. Just seeing the process and seeing everybody talk about the film and how everything was shot and made just gave another perspective on it. So I would definitely tell everybody, go out and check out your social media to check that out. But let's move on to the next thing, because you had alluded to it a little bit, but your feature film that it just came out, everybody, well, most people should be able to watch it, right? Because I know it's on like Apple TV, it's on Google Play. Where else did I see it? Amazon Prime. Yeah, a ton of places. So do you want to speak more? Actually, I'll let you reveal your film.
Okay, thanks, dude.
These dreams of mine. What if they're not just dreams?
Prepare him to rift.
Max Beyond. Available now on digital.
Well, the film only came out, say, about 3 weeks ago. And it's like you said, it's available on all the key platforms: Apple TV, Amazon Video Prime, Sky Movies, which is a big one in the UK that you can watch it on, and obviously Google Play and so on. And there's going to be more platforms revealing. So, backstory, real quick. This was actually going to be a live action movie. Originally, this was called Rift. It was going to be a live action movie. It was, it's one of those ideas that you write as a filmmaker, you constantly come up with a bunch of ideas, sort of like one-page treatments, right? You write one and you're like, no one's ever going to give me money to make this. This is batshit crazy. But you write it, you get it out, and you shelve it. And then when the pandemic hit, all live action was put on hold. And I was using Unreal already, right, to do a lot of previs. It's kind of how I got onto the attention of Epic when they saw I was doing pitch viz for a project called Luna back then, which eventually became Moontopia. They saw it and they're like, hey, this is really cool that you're an indie filmmaker, but you're using Unreal to do previs and stuff. How can we help you? And so when the pandemic hit, I really had so much fun using Unreal. This is like Unreal 4.15, I think, at the time. Really early. And I was doing all this cinematic stuff. But here's the thing. I was doing previs for this live action that never happened. And I was showing it to studio executives and they were like, what is that? And I'm like, that's previs. They're like, no. We've seen previs. Previs usually gray and blocky. You've got like full reflection, shadows, shaders, and it feels like a cinematic for a game. So I remember thinking, wow, maybe we should make movies this way. And I remember looking around, like no one was doing it at the time. Or if I did ask if we should do it, they're like, we're not sure. It's a game engine. I'm going to stick to the whole Maya, Houdini, Arnold, renderer, or RenderMan pipeline, because that's how it's done. So when the pandemic hit, we're like, let's make an animated film. Now, my first feature film called The Beyond. Yes, I have a thing about the Beyond word. So my first movie called The Beyond, which came out in 2018. It's a live action indie film that I produced with my business partner, Paula Crickard, did really well. It was a commercial hit. And it's very rare to say that, for an independent filmmaker to actually have made profits. But that was because it was marketed heavily. Like I pretty much pushed so much. I had zero, print and advertising spend, right? As an indie filmmaker that pretty much self-financed it. So we tapped into NVIDIA, we tapped into HP, Blackmagic, everyone just tech sponsored the hell out of it. And they got a lot of press. And eventually Netflix took it and gave us a really good deal for that in 2019. So we had made profit. So with that money, we were kind of like bootstrapping the company. So when the pandemic hit, we're like, well, let's make an animated film. We don't know when live action is going to happen. And Paula Crickard, my producer, suggested, why don't you take something that is usually unshootable and something that would respect the animation medium more, as opposed to trying to do something that you can do in live action. So we looked at Rift and we brought on a writer. We started developing that. And usually, as you know the process, Jonathan, like usually when you write the full script, you do your pitch deck, and then you go around Hollywood and just try to get it funded. You try to attach an actor to it to help raise the finance or the pre-sales and so on. We didn't do any of that. What we did was, as Stavros, my writer, started writing based on the outline I had given him, me and my colleague Andrea Tetechi started, there was just two of us at the time, just me and Andrea, started putting together like rough scenes. We got some assets on Marketplace and just started blocking some stuff out. And we started making the films. Eventually, we started making our own characters and stuff. But we were doing that while writing the script. So for a writer, that was like, what? This never happened. Usually, it's like I hand the script and see you later. But in the case here, it's just like shooting a TV show. I get to like rewrite stuff. So that was new for him. And then so we started that October 2020. And, naively, me and Andrea thought, we'll make a film all by ourselves. Screw the system. We'll make it ourselves. Obviously, we realized if we're going to do this properly, we're going to need a little bit more people, especially in animation and stuff and mocap. So in around February 2021, we had done like a rough 10-minute version. It was still rough, but we had some basic cell shaders that we were creating using blueprints and the shader material tree. And we started showing it around. But here's the difference, Jonathan. Usually, like I said earlier, you would say you have your pitch deck and your proof of concept. We didn't do that. We're like, here's 10 minutes to certain executives and a bunch of people we showed it to. We're like, here's 10 minutes with the time code and the burn-ins and everything. This is 10 minutes of the movie in production. This train is moving. So either you jump on this and say yes or say no. But we're going to make this movie regardless if this train has left the station. All of a sudden, psychology changes massively. All of a sudden, it's not about, oh, well, look at your script in your pitch deck. We'll put it through development and all of that usual stuff you get in Hollywood, right? They're like, oh, it's either a straight no, not for us, or like, how much do you need? When do you need it by? And that helped massively. So in a way, real-time technology didn't just enable us to make the movie physically. It enabled us to kind of trigger financing way quicker, get people on board way quicker, or people that didn't want to be involved in it wouldn't take you around the circle. They'll just say no instantly. And that helped massively. And then to compress the timeline, it took us 2 years to make it. But during those 2 years, because you know what it's like, dude. It's a community, right? The Unreal Engine artists back in 2020, 2021, which you were like massively part of. I remember there's people like Matt Workman. There's so many amazing people that just created content. That there's like a little circle, and one of the people that were in that circle was a lovely woman called Gabriella, who we all know. Gabriella, who does these amazing tutorials. Like, she's Mrs. Metahuman now, I think. And she did this amazing like mocap stuff. And I remember she was posting stuff, and I was posting my stuff, and she was like, "Oh my god, I love your stuff." I'm like, "I love what you're doing." And we just jumped on a Zoom one day and say, "Let's collaborate." All of a sudden, she was doing all this mocap. And we had this pipeline going. And then another guy called Mark Cheng, who had done this really cool samurai proof of concept, he reached out and said, "Hey, man, I love what you're doing." I'm like, "Hey, we're hiring. We're not going to pay a lot of money, but we'll pay your day rate to work on this on the short term." And they were like, he came in, and we just started building. And Alex Kong is another guy who you may recognize from the Reillusion tutorials. We had built the entire crew via the online community of creators that were just sharing stuff online. It was phenomenal. It was like, that's when we knew we were like disrupting, not just disrupting the way films are made, but the way we're getting a collective of people to effectively work on a commercial project to get made in a game engine, which was very, very risky. Like, no one was doing it, dude. Like, I had animators that were working at Nickelodeon and so on. They're like, "Dude, we're hearing that you're making this feature film in the video game engine and you're financing it. Are you sure you're okay?" But it's one of those things, you just got to do it and try it. And, flash forward now, the movie's out. And we stuck in 426, by the way. So I know a lot of people keep asking, is this 5? And I'm like, no, this is Unreal Engine 426.2. So why didn't we update? We could have easily updated, right? And believe me, dude, we're so tempted to update to 427, 428, and so on, 5. But we stuck with it because we had built a lot of tools. So remember I said we got a mega grant to kind of help kickstart. By the way, that 10-minute that I told you earlier that we did, that was also showed to Epic as well. And that's when Epic go, "What do you guys need?" I'm like, "Got some money." They're like, "Okay, here's a mega grant." So here's a few things. We were building a CG anime, right? So we were literally turning off things like PBR. We didn't want to, as we all know, Unreal is very heavy on photo-based rendering. We were like, we don't want it to be photorealistic. We want it to be super, super stylized. So there wasn't any cel-shaded shaders. There were post-processed filters, yes, but that's not the same. Because the minute you move the camera around, all the lines break because it's a filter, right? Of course, now the filters are a bit better, but back then, the post-processed filters were very rough. So Andrea spent a lot of time just building its own complicated shader network tree, and you'll see some of that behind the scenes as well. That it was just heavy. So when Epic saw that, they go, "Look, this is new. This could potentially inspire us internally as well." So we end up doing that. The other thing also was we were making a 4K HDR rendered movie. This was final pixels, so we were not rendering layers of EXR. Layered EXRs and then composite and layer in After Effects or Nuke. No, we were doing final pixels. What you see is what you get. So there's pros and cons. The pro is, you render it once, it goes straight in your DaVinci Resolve edit and you got it. The con is you are kind of limited to what you see. You can't go and tweak the background like you would do in post. So we had to design.
So when you rendered it out, so you're saying it's Final Pixel. Did you do color correction inside of Unreal as well? Or did you send it to DaVinci and do?
No, no. So when I say Final Pixel, I meant like no compositing, like compositing the backgrounds and that kind of thing. But of course, we were in EXRs, 4K. 10-bit. So we were able to take that into DaVinci Resolve and do a color grade on that. But the interesting thing is I edited the entire movie in Resolve. So essentially my computer window was essentially Unreal Engine 426 and Resolve. So I would do the shots, render it out, or go direct into DaVinci Resolve. And I would just overwrite the EXR frames, by the way. I wouldn't do versions, because the only thing I would do versions was my sequencer files. They were the only things I needed versions of. I didn't need versions of like 20,000 EXRs, right? Because I just don't have the data space for it. So I kept overwriting and stuff, and it worked really well. And and then eventually, once we had picture lock, we then brought on a colorist called Vanessa who had worked on The Northman, and she just took it. I don't know what it is about colorists, Jonathan. They do this thing, they're just mixed into a movie. I don't know what it is. It's like this magic thing they do. It's just amazing.
Get paid a lot of money. Like I know out here there's a couple of colorists we've worked on TV shows and stuff like that, and like I'll send out my renders to them because I do a lot of motion graphics work, and they'll tweak it and make it so much better. And I've asked them, I'm like, what do you do? And he's just like, some people just have an eye for this thing, and you get paid a lot of money for that eye because you're able to see in a color spectrum that other people can't see in. So to us, it looks like voodoo, but to them, it's just like they know exactly, how black should look, how different colors should look, and the color spectrum. They just understand it, which is kind of wild. But there's very few people that are actually really good at that.
Yeah, 100. And they a lot of times, like Vanessa will be looking at the scopes rather than the picture as well. I noticed she was tweaking like the black and white points, just looking at the scopes, and I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing. So yeah, it's experience, and that's the thing, bringing on people at the right time for experience. Like we couldn't hire like a Pixar level animator, so we had to rely on motion capture. I'm not an animator by trade. I can animate, but I'm not a fantastic character animator. I can move cameras and stuff. So, we relied on motion capture a lot. We also relied on re-illusion tools. So using iClone, using Character Creator to build all our characters originally. We use things like Expressions Editor to create the expressions. Again, we're in very stylized mode. We purposely made a very, very stylized show so that it didn't get compared to like Love, Death and Robots or anything like that, because that's the last thing we want to be compared to, because we're not that. So we had to be very smart on how we use our resources, and that meant going back to what is the design of the film, what is the aesthetic of the film, what is achievable within the budget and the time we had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to emphasize that it was done in 4.26, because even on the gaming side, we're still not seeing a lot of games that are done properly in Unreal Engine 5. A lot of them are still coming out from 4, and a lot of people are saying like, we've been in Unreal Engine 5 for the past 2-3 years. Where are the game's at? And it's because whenever you start production, whatever version you're in, you usually lock it at that, because if you go and try to upgrade everything you worked on, a lot of stuff is liable to break. So especially if you're doing a lot of blueprinting, like blueprints break. Like I was a victim of this. I was working on a TV show in 4.27 and 5 came out, and I was so excited to jump into 5. I actually updated my scene in 5, and I don't know why, because it makes a copy, but for some, I guess maybe because of spacing issues, like I deleted my original file there, and I was working in 5. And after I started doing some animation stuff, I realized that a lot of stuff was broke. And so actually I was able to reach out to some people at Epic to help me fix it, going into the initial files there and stuff like that, and restructuring some of the text formats. But yeah, it's very dangerous, like upgrading your project just because a new shiny thing is out there. So a lot of times whenever you're working in a project, lock yourself into that version.
Good advice, dude. And and the fact people need to remember that it's not a fully functional software. It's essentially still a beta software. It's constantly being developed. So there's always this disclaimer: use at your own risk, right? So like you always get like people on forums, oh my god, this sucks. I'm like, at the time, when it was free, like, dude, you're getting this game engine to make your dreams come true. Yes, it's a bit clunky in some places because they're developing it and they rely on us to kind of feedback that development. So quit your complaining kind of thing, But of course, now with 5.4, there is a licensing structure, rightly so, because people are making movies, people are making, commercial products out of this. So it does make sense. But like, yeah, it is a game engine. There's a lot of, people ask me what's the difference between live action or traditional animation, like conventional animation, and making something in a video game engine. And the thing I'll tell you is the variables are way higher when you're making something in a game engine. Yeah. So much more variables, like updating a plugin, updating a blueprint, updating engine if you dare to do it, but also, things like, for example, I'll give you a good example, physics, right? So we all love in-game physics. We get it for free because you just hit that play button and you got all the dynamics and everything, which is great for video games for real-time application. In our case, we're using a real-time application to render out flat frames at 24 frames per second. So I remember we had physics on and everything. It looked great in engine. And when we rendered it, we just get all this flapping around. Just flapping, the hands flapping. And that's because the engine was like, dude, like you're forcing me to play at 24 frames per second. I'm running at 60 frames per second in engine. What are you doing? So all we end up having to do is turn off all the physics. I remember Andreas going through and turning off every single physics in all of the, texture settings, geometry settings, everything, all the Niagara stuff. And we end up pre-baking everything. So we even had hair animation because it's stylized anime in 3D Studio Max. Andrea would create like 7 or 8 different variations of these movement, and everything was FBX, by the way. Everything was exported as FBX. We didn't use any Alembic caches or anything like that. Everything was FBX. And then in Sequencer, we would have a bunch of stuff that we can bring the hair FBX. But also, one of the things that was really, really cool because essentially there was only like 2 people creating the shots. Originally, it was me creating every single shot, and then we bought Mark Cheng, and Mark Cheng came on and started doing shots with me. So essentially, just 2 people doing every single shot creation in the movie. So we didn't have time to like adjust rigs and stuff like that. We just had to go in and just bring stuff in and make it work. So Andrea, like, bless that guy, he just like made it work for us because we kept breaking stuff. So he would build a system, which was a very additive system, animation system, where in Sequencer we had various channels, and he would create like the hand channel, the mouth channel, the face channel, which is the head socket, basically sockets on the skeleton, and the body skeleton. So that means we do our mocap, and we didn't have a budget to do sort of like HMI, capture the face with the mocap. So we did that. We had the Manus gloves. Obviously, Gabriella Alex had the gloves. We did those, and then, but the hands never really worked perfectly, as you know. Yeah, back then it wasn't as good as we have it like Stretch Sense today, right, or other ones. So we end up going into iClone and using Gesture plugin, the puppet tool, to do all the hand movement, which is amazing. And then we'll export just the hand as an FBX, bring it into Sequencer, drop down hand socket, replace the hands. Now the reason this was great is because I can block the shots out, and then Alex or whoever's on my team can go in and just adjust the animation. And it was all additive. It was not destructive. Right down to the lip syncing. We did a lot of the lip syncing by editing the audio in DaVinci Resolve, export out the WAVs, bring it into iClone, Lip Sync, get the animation onto the avatar character, and just export just the mouth and bring that into Sequencer. Which meant that when we did screen testing and we got feedback and people go, oh, that dialogue didn't work, we did re-records and we just updated lip sync. We didn't need to go in and reanimate all the other stuff that would usually be very hard to do if you're using like conventional pipeline. So there was a lot of things that we figured out at necessity to make it work.
That's actually a really cool use case. I didn't even think about that, how you could go back and change the dialogue and just go in. Because I use Oculips myself, and
right.
I really never thought about that. Like, hey, you have all the movement already. All you have to do is replace the mouth gestures and the audio, and you get them saying something completely different, which is really dope.
Exactly.
But I know, I don't know if you want to speak on it at all, because I know, like you had alluded to, like it used to be called Rift, and I actually played Rift when the video game was out. And is that something that you want to speak on? Like how you were able to use the same assets for the movie for a proper video game there as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it'll be a crime not to mention that we were making a video game on this, because we started this whole conversation about the whole transmedia, right? Why Moontopia became this whole transmedia project. But in fairness, the transmedia element actually started with this project. So what happened was, like, I wanted to animate a car scene, and I couldn't quite get the animation looking right. And so we plugged an Xbox controller in and started just driving the car around. And we got all this like physics and everything. I'm like, whoa! And this was so helpful for us in Sequencer to animate the physics, to bake it in and everything. But as I was doing that, I'm like, there's so much that I wish I could put into this movie. I can't put in. Like, it's a 92-minute movie. You don't want to overbloat it, and it doesn't help. It's a multiverse movie as well. So we had to, like, there's so many things on the cutting floor. So I remember, like, one day it was myself, Andrea, and Sam. We just thought, let's just do a game jam session. This is experimental. Let's just create a new game project within the same ecosystem, migrate the one environment and 2 of the characters and some of the baddies, right? And we had them all the skeleton was in there and stuff. And we started, creating locomotion, animation, all that stuff that's very game. And within a weekend, we had a rough demo. It was very rough, but to be fair, there was lots of collision issues. But the fact that we can walk around, shoot, and guess what? One of the most expensive resources in video games is the art resource. But we had spent just coming up to 2 years making all these original characters, all this original mocap, all these amazing voices that were done by people like Jane Perry, who's a BAFTA winner, who did Cyberpunk, Hitman. We had Dave Fennoy, who did Walking Dead. We had these amazing talent, and we had all these resources. All we needed to do was spend some time with the code. And and it's not like we did C++, dude. We're not freaking coders. Everything's in Blueprint. We went onto the marketplace, looked at, blueprints to do with NPC AIs. We're like, great, let's buy that. And we just plugged everything in really roughly just to make it work. But we had something. So we put it on Steam. Now, we put it on Steam as an early access, and it's the version you played. And only, not because we wanted to say, hell, here's a game, but it's really just to test the market to see, would this work? And it's a great example of testing a very early MVP, minimal viable product, right? To see, and this wasn't what you call a true vertical slice, which is the term they use in the game industry for a playable demo. This wasn't that. It was more like to see what it was like. And we got feedback. People loved the game. Some people hated the game. And boy, that's when you really see the difference between the film industry and the game industry.
Right.
People will rip your game. But here's the difference, dude. In the film industry, you can't release your movie, get all this feedback, and then you go back and refix it, right? Whereas in the game industry, you get torn apart, but you go away and you come back with a new version, they're forgiving. They're like, yeah, cool, we got it. It's early access. Great, you listened to us. You really fixed those bugs. It's great. So one of the people that came back to us was Microsoft, and they suggested that we apply for what you call the ID at Xbox program, Independent Developers Program. I was like, dude, there's no way we're getting this. We're not even, I've worked in games, but I'm not like a freaking developer, right? So, but we sent them a rough cut of the movie. We did this whole pitch, this is a transmedia project, film to game, and shares the same universe, same assets. And they came back, so we love this. We love your approach. Here's 2 development kits. There's a picture on Twitter I posted, because you can't post the dev kits because it's illegal. You can't show the hardware, but you can show the box. And Microsoft saying, welcome to the family. But, dude, at that point, I remember when I got the dev kits, I'm like, shit, we're a game developer now. We have to make this game. But also, I remember back in 98, 99, when I was working, for video games, development kits are something you don't come lightly. They're very, very expensive, very hard to get. And all of a sudden, we have dev kits, we're making a game. So all of a sudden, we're like, we need to start thinking like a game developer. And the interesting thing is, dude, we're still in development on the project. We've had to rescope the game massively. And this is something I'm gladly to share on this podcast, dude. And the fact that people don't realize that when you're making content, whether it's film, music, or games, any type of art, a lot of it is based on the market. You can't just go off and say, I'm going to make this game because I think it's going to be awesome. The world needs it. I mean, you could if you got a lot of money. But if you're looking to get support from publishers or console manufacturers and so on, you kind of need to see what is going on. And we had made a demo. We showed it at GDC, at Gamescom and places like that. And because we had all the gorgeous assets we had created in the film, and the game looked pretty polished, apart from some bugs and stuff technically, publishers were like, it's a bit too good. And it feels a bit too big. This feels like it should be Cyberpunk or Last of Us or something. So we had to rescope. So early this year, we paused. We looked at the market. It wasn't very good, the game industry. Let's face it. There's a lot of really unfortunate news happening, like studios shutting down, people getting laid off. It was a horrible time to make a game, especially at the scale we wanted to make it. So we scaled it down, but we're making a co-op game, split screen co-op, puzzle action, as opposed to full-on Last of Us, Cyberpunk-esque cinematics driven. We're not going to do that. And you know what the funny thing is, dude? Not only was that a big weight off our shoulders, the game is way more fun to play. Way more fun to play. And it reminded me, it's respect the medium. Just because we're filmmakers doesn't mean we have to make a gorgeous, full-on Last of Us cinematic game. For us, making a game is about having fun. Making a movie is about being immersed in the storyline. So for us, it was about fun. And we stripped away all the cinematic stuff. We used all of the game assets, of course, and the plot story, which is you have to protect the little kid and so on. But now you get to play as the kid, use its abilities, and problem solve as opposed to relying on mindless violence like the movie is. And that helped massively. That helped us get much more traction. And we're still in development on the project. We'll announce at some point where we are. But we're game developers now.
Yeah, I mean, fun is a biggest aspect I think a lot of game devs actually forget about, because like you said, like a lot of places are spending a lot of money making these games, these big full-on cinematic roles. Like I think Spider-Man came out to be like 300 million or something crazy. That one that's on PlayStation 5. And yeah, it was critically acclaimed. It was fun, but they could have probably did it for a much smaller budget if they would have just focused on what made the first game fun, instead of like trying to go all in on these big cinematic experiences. And I think that the gaming industry is kind of at a threshold right now where they're trying to figure that out. Like I feel like Nintendo has had this secret sauce and no one's been actually dipping into it, because it's like you have this 8-year-old hardware with the Switch. It barely runs like, what is it, like 720p, and yet they come out and their games are at the top of the list every month. You have like Breath of the Wild, and the whole focus there was people are like, we don't care about the graphics, we care that it was fun. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Minecraft is like a 10-year-old game, still at the top of the charts. Fortnite, 8 years old. Like all these old games, people are like, how are they staying on top of the market? And it's because people think that they're fun. Like they don't care about the graphics, they don't care about fidelity. At the end of the day, it's about, am I enjoying what I'm playing? And so that was cool that you guys actually stripped back and was like, let's refocus on what makes a game, because a lot of people get tripped up and we need to make this big iconic cinematic experiences because we have so much at our access, right? Like we have access to motion capture suits. You can buy a Rococo suit for fairly cheap. Unreal is free. Yeah, Blender, that is free. Like all these things that when me and you were first in the industry, you had to be in the industry to have access to a lot of this stuff. And that's where I feel like sometimes less is more. Like when we're talking about the 400 megabyte limit with UEFN, I think that's kind of a blessing because it makes you sit back and think about, what do I truly need to make this experience something neat, rather than having unlimited access and be like, okay, I could throw the kitchen sink at it. Because if you have a lot, that doesn't mean that it's going to make it good, right? I think as creatives, sometimes you have to have those barriers up to really hone in on what's going to make something good. Like I know there was music producer Manny Fresh. She used to produce Cash Money, like Juvenile and them. Recently, he did an interview and he was like, all of his number one hits that went multi-platinum, he only had 16 tracks to create all that music. So he's like, producers now, they have unlimited tracks when it comes to layering their music. And he's like, even back when he first started, he only had 4 tracks and it was on digital tape. And he was making, platinum beats back then. So it's kind of like, you have to give yourself some type of threshold there and not, we have access to so much stuff that it's becoming a hindrance to a lot of people, I think.
I 100% agree. I'm glad you brought on those examples as well, because people forget, like back in the day, that we were very limited. Very, very. I mean, if you look at ILM is one of the biggest visual effects houses in the world. But if you look at what they did in Jurassic Park, with a computer that is like got a couple of kilobytes of memory or something, like it's phenomenal. And I think you're right. I feel like we are a little bit spoilt today with things like MetaHumans and Unreal Engine 5, and that we get so overwhelmed with how things look and that we forget, like, if you're making a movie, the crux of any storytelling is storytelling characters. Story. Same with video games that we're talking now. It's about the fun. And you're absolutely right. Like when we had the 400 meg limitation on Moontopia, it forced us to really think about smart ways to keep things engaged. In fact, we had a 3-minute cinematic sequence at the start of Moontopia. And I remember we play tested it and people were like, you can hear them like, where's the skip button, man? I've seen this already. I'm like, wow. So you really had to. So for us, we then started doing storytelling within the game. So as you're walking around, there'd be like little bits of text coming up, or you'll hear a character, or the environment was built to do storytelling, right? So you start off with a big crashed spaceship. You're like, okay, I know what's going on here. A crashed spaceship. You see some like the other survivors. You're like, okay, this is a situation, and you see the oxygen thing coming up. So you only got X amount of oxygen. You gotta go. So that's storytelling right there. You don't need a cinematic to tell you that. there's player agency, and you go ahead. And that's the same thing like we're doing with expansion now. Like we're not having any cinematics. We're doing all the storytelling and gameplay. And I feel like if I wasn't limited to 400 meg, I probably wouldn't have thought outside the box to find a new way to tell stories and not just be reliant on, we'll just throw trillions of polygons at this and make it look good. So you're absolutely right, dude. And also, people forget, dude, like you do a short film with a metahuman short film with beautiful lumen lighting, and it's like 3 minutes long and it's gorgeous, right? And then everyone's like, you should make a feature out of this. Sure, but to do a 92-minute feature film with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shots and get it done on a budget, on a schedule, with a release date, with performances and all of that stuff in screen testing, you start to realize that, just because you made a short doesn't necessarily mean that you can go off and make a feature this way. So I feel like sometimes, I'm guilty of that as well. I remember I made my first short I'm like, I'm going to make a feature. And when we realized, oh my God, we have to strip it down, make it more stylized. So I feel like sometimes there's a lot of style over substance in a lot of projects, and I'm guilty of it, doing that sometimes myself on some of the tests. But sometimes it's always good to have someone just remind you that, it's all about storytelling. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't like, if you look at Max Beyond, it isn't the most gorgeous, perfect animation. In fact, we end up purposely making it kind of like a 90s style animation because we'd rather be judged on the animation as opposed to being judged by the story. We paid particularly attention with the story, editorial, re-recorded dialogue, redid sequences, cut out shots, which is the advantage of being in real time, by the way. You cut out shots, it doesn't affect you that much. And so I feel like sometimes you've got to choose your battles, and I think people got to remind themselves that it's just a tool, dude. It's just a tool to get you to do the job. It's still like, Rick Rubin, big, admirer of what he does, and he always goes as think back, like keep it simple. What is the story you're telling, and then you bring in the technology to facilitate that. I sometimes feel like people are like looking at what they can do in metahumans and stuff, and then go, we're gonna make a story now that we've done metahumans. I feel like it should be the other way around a little bit. Just think about the story you want to tell and then see if you can achieve it. So
Yeah, that's why a lot of time I don't even do metahuman stuff, honestly, just because I try to make people think outside the box. Like I know you use a lot of Revolution stuff, I do as well. And like I've done a lot of stuff and people are like, can you do a metahuman tutorial on that? And I'm like, I didn't even use metahuman. Like I'm using character creator. And they're like, well, why are you using that? And I'm like, because there's other tools out there. Like I feel like everybody's so ingrained to metahuman, they feel like they have to use that. And I'm like, sometimes think outside the box, and you never know what's out there. Like you might find that tool set that you've become accustomed to, and you could be the best at that rather than making, I don't know about you, but I feel like a lot of metahuman stuff looks like metahuman. Like when you see something, you can be like, okay, that's a metahuman, because like people aren't really pushing it to the boundaries that they should be, just because they're doing a bare minimum, which I feel like sucks. But again, these tools are free. A lot of people have mass adoption to them, so you're going to get that, which I kind of respect more, that you guys want a stylized approach, because that's a thing that I like too. Like I like stylized video games. I like stylized movies more than photoreal, just because I feel like there's such a huge saturation in people chasing photorealism that it just doesn't appeal to me anymore. Like I'd rather see somebody push the boundaries and make something highly stylized that you don't see a lot of, rather than seeing the same old out there. So I feel like that was going to it's going to kind of make you guys stand outside of everything else that's out there. And plus your approach to it, that you purposely didn't try to make it like Pixar level quality, because then at that point you put yourself in that basket of being compared to Pixar, right? And people are going to be like, okay, I can see what they're trying to do, but it's not Pixar, right? And then they're going to automatically trash it. So you kind of take yourself outside that box right off the bat and say, like, we're not trying to be Pixar. We're trying to be Hazimation, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. And you change the focus onto what you're trying to, achieve there, rather than being opposed to what other people have already done in the past.
Totally. I feel like we should really mention that there is making the content, and then there's getting the content out there. And we're both very aware that PR and marketing is probably the key, that we find a lot of creatives don't realize that. A lot of creatives I know that are doing some amazing work they do. And they're like, we're just going to put it on YouTube and we'll find our followers. I'm like, I think
Yeah.
you need a bit more than that. So I always find, like, always have a marketing hat on. Like for us, for this movie, Max Beyond, we never once intended to, like, we never once said this is an animated film up against Ninja Turtles or Garfield or something like that. We're like, absolutely no. Or try to say we're a low budget version of those films, because you are going to get hammered, right? So what we end up doing was say, look, let's focus on like what this is. And essentially this is a prequel to the video game. So we promoted it very heavily in the video game world, saying, look, the game's coming out, it's in development. While you're waiting, here's a short here's a 93-minute movie to explain the world of the film. Overwatch did that as well, right? The game Overwatch, they did these really amazing short films. I was inspired by that, because even before even League of Legends do that as well. They release these episodes. So we kind of took that route, and we found that all of a sudden you're not up against like trying to get an announcement in a Hollywood Reporter or trying to go to an animation festival and be up against it. Granted, the film was premiered in Sparks Animation Festival, which is one of the biggest animation festivals in Vancouver. It got its an Oscar-winning festival, validated. And I remember like Mariana was saying like, this is unique, but are you hoping this is going to be up against all the other animation? I'm like, no, absolutely not. This is storytelling. This is a prequel to a video game. We're using the medium of animation to tell that story. And she just totally got it. And she's the president of Sparks. And she's like, I get this. And she got it screened. I went to Vancouver. It was amazing. So I think, a lot of creators, they need to kind of wear that producer's hat. A lot of creators like, I'm not a producer. I'm a creator, man. I don't deal with money and stuff. Well, if you kind of want to stand out, you kind of need to like wear a lot of hats.
That's important. Like, we are our brands at the end of the day. And I try to hone that into a lot of people. Like, even when we did the tour last year, I want to say it was even Berlin, one of the people in the audience was like, how do I get up on stage? Like, how do I get to where you're at? And I'm like, I might not be the best artist in the world, but I'll be damned if I'm not the hardest working. And in that comes me trying to get exposure for myself. And so, like, if there's a podcast, even if it's a brand new podcast and they have one viewer, that's one viewer that didn't know about you before. So it's like, always put yourself out there, always look for those opportunities to put yourself out there. And sooner than later, a lot of people are going to start seeing you out there a lot. Like, the one comment I get all the time is, damn, Winbush, we see you all over the damn place. And it's like, when there's opportunity, you got to kick that door down. You can't be hesitant about it. You can't be wishy-washy about it. Like, I take a lot of, like, I don't like him as a person, but I take a lot of influence from Conor McGregor, right? Like, he was a UFC fighter. He was coming up. He was unknown. But the main thing he did was he made sure that he had a lot of exposure on himself. Even before he became a champion, he was always out there running his mouth, and the media was always on him. And with that, once he finally, became champion and was doing pay-per-views, he was the highest paid fighter. And a lot of other fighters were jealous of it. They might have like more experience than him, or they won more fights, but they're like, why does Conor get all this exposure and all this money? And Dana White's like, he's out there putting the work in. Like, you guys, I know a lot of fighters are saying like, I just want to be a fighter. I don't want to promote myself or do this and that. And he's like, that your pay is going to reflect that. Like, if you're not getting yourself out there. Same thing with Ronda Rousey. Like, as soon as she jumped in the UFC, before she had her first fight, she was doing red carpets. She was doing guest roles on TV spots and movies, like really trying to, broadcast yourself to another audience. And I feel like that's important. As artists, we need to take influence on that and really get yourself out there. Like, I run around a lot with Mixmaster Mike. I'm at all these music concerts and people are knowing me on the other side. Like, I'm not just in motion graphics. Like, I try to transcend what people know me for. And I think that's become a lot of what I've become lately in these past couple of years. So much like yourself too, I know you do a lot of PR and you do a lot of exposure. Like, it's important. Like, no matter, people will try to trash us for it, but at the end of the day, it's like, it's working for us, right? They wouldn't try to trash us on it if they weren't jealous of where it's taking us, right? So
oh yeah, I mean, dude, there's a nickname for me. People call me the PR slut, and I don't care, because at the end of the day, dude, like, if you're passionate about your work and you want to celebrate your work, no one is going to do it for you. So you may as well shout about your work, be that brand. And let's face it, like you hit the nail right there, dude, which is like you are the brand. If you're an artist today and you want to play in the space of immersive content or creating content that feels big, it has a massive audience, and you can't rely on the traditional legacy of PR. You know, the traditional thing is hire a PR agency and they'll get you a spot in Hollywood Reporter. Yeah, you probably will get that interview, but that's it. And you find audiences today are getting away from reading the press release about it. They kind of want to see stuff directly from the content creator. They want to feel connected. You know, I do a lot of talks exactly like what you do, like go on stage and talk. And at the end, you know what it's like. You get a queue of people coming up. And most of the time, it isn't like, oh my God, your work's amazing. Most of the time, it's like, dude, like you inspired me to go and create content. Like you're someone that looks like me that's doing this, and I can go off and create content. To me, that is way better. That to me, like as an artist, that I've inspired someone else to do that. And that person's going to tell someone else. And that person may go on his YouTube channel or her YouTube channel or podcast and mention all of a sudden your brand is elevated and you haven't paid a single penny to a PR agency. It's word of mouth. It's other artists talking about other artists. And I feel like people got to think about that because that's at your fingertips. Anyone can do that.
Yeah, which is another reason why I put myself at the beginning of every single tutorial. Like I know some people have scoffed at that and they're like, dude, just give us the tutorial. We don't need to see you. And it's like, no, you do need to see me because I'm actually getting recognized on the street now and people are associating me with my name. And if I didn't put myself on camera and put myself out there, those wouldn't happen. And then like you were saying, a lot of times, especially for artists that look like us in the industry, they're like, we didn't realize that people that look like us are doing this at a high level. And you inspire that person, which that person will inspire another person. And, a lot of times I get like, hey, I didn't know motion graphics was possible for people that look like me. But when I saw Winbush do a seminar or a workshop and I was exposed to this whole other industry, now I'm working on Black Panther or stuff like that.
Wicked.
So that stuff is really inspiring. And as artists, no matter what your background is, I would say it's really important to put yourself out there because you just never know who's looking at the other end of that camera. Like I'm always amazed at the people that come up to me and just say like, thank you for putting yourself out there. And like I did NAB. I did the NAB live stage, and a lady from India actually came up to me crying and saying, like, you don't know how many lives you've changed in India from your YouTube channel. Like, people have jobs at DreamWorks India and all these other places. And it's not even from the tutorials, but you just gave them the courage to say, like, hey, I could do this as well. So those type of things are really important. Like, I know we're trying to push our products at the end of the day, but we're doing so much more by just being on camera like this. Like people that look like you, they see this and they're going to be inspired saying like, hey, let me make a feature film. Let me make a video game. Let me be a PR slut, whatever you got to do to put yourself out there. Like you're inspiring a whole nother generation out there, which is very commendable.
I mean, if this doesn't inspire someone, at least one person, like we said earlier, if it doesn't inspire one person, then hey. But no, man, this is cool. Like, thanks so much for like getting me on your show, bro. Like, I really appreciate it. And like, definitely like check out the trailer for the movie. It's available. Definitely watch it. But I can't wait to see what you come up with next in UEFN because I know we've been speaking a lot about what you're doing in UEFN. I know you're doing stuff with Master Mike, and yeah, man, just can't wait to see what you come out with, man. So yeah, don't leave me in suspense too long.
It's the perfectionism syndrome, right? And it's the inspiration syndrome too, as well. Like it's tough. Like I should have had my first map out by now, but I play a lot of video games, and I was actually playing Ninja Turtles the other day, and like I put out the video like with the wall smashing, and I was able to get that.
I saw that.
UEFN. That was inspiration from Ninja Turtles because I was playing the sewer scene and the monsters jumped out, and I was like, oh shit, that'd be dope to put in my game. So it's like I got to stop playing games and watching stuff because I keep getting inspired on adding more and more stuff to it. But it's
we fell in a similar trap when we were doing Max Beyond. Like we were just constantly like looking at Love, Death and Robots, look at all these other shows. Oh, let's try and fit that in. And then eventually I had to do it to myself because I was getting like to the point I'm like, oh, I want to do all this stuff. And I'm like, I really can't do that. And something's going to suffer, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully not the story. So I had this big writing on my wall I put, which is basically progression over perfection.
Right.
And that is so important. It's so much better to get a bunch of previous shots in the edit as opposed to having big blank gaps in the edit. Same with a game. It's better to have a playable version that you can immerse yourself in. Yes, it's going to be riddled with bugs. Yes, it's going to be collision issues. Yes, certain things won't look as good. But hey, you have a version going. That's progress. So now the next week, you update the collision. The next week, you update the characters. And within a few weeks, you have a game, as opposed to just not ready to release. And I feel like it's a syndrome that every artist has. It's kind of like the imposter syndrome, right? But this is like the whole perfection syndrome. Everyone has it. If you don't have it, you're not human, right? But I feel like ever since I had that mentality of progression over perfection, I found that I was getting more stuff done. I was having more opportunities open to me, because you don't need to have that gorgeous polished version to show someone what you're working on to potentially open other doors for you.
Yeah, I need to put a deadline on myself too, because that's the difference. You have client work, and it's like we have a hard out in 2 weeks. So whatever it looks like in 2 weeks, that's going to be the hard out. And that it works. Like, of course, every project you're like, oh, I wish I would have did this, this, and this to make it better. But at the end of the day, the client's happy, and so it's like, okay, I should be happy too. So definitely
100%.
need to just start throwing some deadlines on myself and be like, this is the hard cutoff, whatever it's at that point, let it be, but definitely thank you for all your words of wisdom and inspiration on, just, chatting back and forth with all this stuff that we've been working on, because there's a lot of cross-pollination there, and hopefully we get to collaborate on something here in the future. That'd be really dope.
100%, man. 100%. Yes.
Yeah,
Let's do it. Let's make it happen.
I want to end out with you giving your social medias, because everybody should know exactly where to find you, so they know where they can look all this stuff up. Of course, we'll have it down in the description, but
definitely
got it out real quick where everybody can find you.
You can definitely find me on LinkedIn if you just type in HAZ_Dulull, or the Americans HAZ_Dulull. You can find me. I'm on Instagram as Haz Dulull. That's a whole different podcast why I got that name. But also on YouTube, if you just type in Hazimation, it comes up. And I think that's the beauty about having a unique title as well. Having it'll come up on the thing. So just quick tip. Reason why Moontopia got a lot of traction as well. There was no other game called Moontopia. So that's another tip. Name your game titles uniquely so they come up on top. So yeah, almost, you can reach me on Twitter, or now called X. But yeah, I'm constantly posting stuff, dude. I'm constantly posting behind the scenes. And also I want to see what everyone else is working on, because everyone else inspires me, so absolutely.
You definitely got to start doing some tutorials, man, putting it out there on YouTube.
I'm inspired by you, bro, so I think I will.
Yeah, that's the big thing. I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to know once they see the movie, like how exactly you did it. So I know you have a ton of behind the scenes stuff, but maybe just breaking down one scene and showing step by step how to do it, that would go a long way in helping people out.
I agree. Absolutely.
All right, cool, man. Well, I know we're cutting it a little bit long here, so hopefully people are making it here to the end. If you did, give me a big what up down there inside the comments. Let me know you made it here to the end of the interview. Make sure you check out all of Haz's stuff up there on social media, the YouTube, and more importantly, make sure you check it out on the streaming platforms, because that's going to help him with the algorithm. We all know how these different streaming platforms work. You have to watch them in order for the algorithm to suggest them for other people. So even if you're not watching it, just throw it on and go do your thing, and help them out there. If you make it to the end of the runtime, that's definitely going to be a huge help. But yeah, definitely watch it, get inspired by it. Make sure you leave a comment, let them know what you think about it. Until next time, stay fresh, keep creating, and I'll catch you on the next video. It'll be a tutorial, I promise. But until then, make sure you check out Max Beyond.